A Week at Boy Scout Reservation, Camp Lenape by Davis J. Haines, Jr. My goodness, I hate doing this. Knock, knock, knock. Would you like to buy some pretzels to send me to camp? I asked my neighbor, Miss Shute. Sure, Davy, I will take 2 bags. Almost there, just 100 bags left to sell. Ugh. Going to camp has always been the highlight of my summer. 1 week away from my parents with my best friends, Ed and Jimmy. At camp, in the woods, we were the kings. We were the Rattlesnake Patrol of Boy Scout Troop 11. The first day of camp is always the most awkward. The parents dropping off their sons, the sons trying to be cool as their moms give them their goodbye kiss. "Goodbye, Pumpkin," Ed's mom said to him as she gave him a kiss on his forehead. "Pumpkin," I said out loud. Everybody at the table had a good laugh. So Pumpkin was now Ed's camp name forever. As the last parents walked out of the camp, the scoutmasters went over to their areas to set their camp up. That's when the fun really began. First you had to pick your tent. And the tents were old. Like Vietnam War kind of old. But they worked. They always assigned a younger scout with an older scout as a bunkmate, so that they wouldn't get scared, I guess. For some scouts, this was the first time away from their mommy and daddy. When you put your sleeping bag on the cot and then put your mosquito netting up. Now, mosquito netting was very important, especially in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey in August. The mosquitoes were so bad once, I saw a swarm of them pick up a new scout and carry him away. Well, maybe not. But that's what I would tell the younger scouts staying with me. The whole part of summer camp was to get merit badges. But there was so much more to do. You could go swimming, canoeing, rowboating, the archery range, the rifle range, hiking, and even Nature Island. No one cared what you did. You just had to show up for some functions and eat all your meals with the rest of the troop. Monday morning began the first day at camp, and it started like any other camping trip. Mr. Hoke, our assistant scoutmaster / drill instructor, would yell, "Get up, get up, get out of the rack," over and over at the top of his lungs at 7:30 a.m. Mr. Hoke was an ex-Marine, and it wasn't until I was in the Marines years later that I would hear the same thing, but at 4 o'clock a.m. How I loved the breakfast at camp. Well, but not the runny eggs, the sausage, or the 2 pieces of bacon. It was all about the cereal for me. Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks. Well, you see, my mom was kind of a hippie, and she would only let us eat cornflakes and shredded wheat and food like that. I think they call that healthy eating now, but back then it was just yuck. After breakfast, me, Jimmy, and Ed, whose name was now Pumpkin, headed over to the archery range. The archery range. As you approached the gate of the archery range, you had to ask permission to enter it. And when the range master granted it, you would walk through the gates, and something would happen. You were transported to a different place, a different time. With a longbow in my hand and a quiver of arrows across my back, me and my merry men were off to protect the innocent, steal from the rich, and give to the poor. Kind of like a congressman does now, but back then, I was Robin Hood. As we walked through the woods, we came up with the plan to set a trap, for surely a wealthy nobleman would be coming down this path soon. What would be the best way to stop a carriage, I asked. Well, little Jimmy suggested that we dig a hole, and as the carriage passed, the horse would fall in, and in all the chaos we would just pluck the chest of gold with all the coins. Friar Pumpkin thought that we could drag a tree across the road, and that would be more effective and easier, and I agreed. With the tree in place, we waited for our prey to enter our trap. We could see the carriage approaching from the distance. 4 horses pulled it with a driver and 7 guards. 3 on the carriage and another 4 on horseback. Having made a pact not to take any lives, we drew our bows as the carriage rolled to a stop at the fallen tree. Unfortunately, the guards did not make such a pact with us and let loose with a volley from their longbows, and with swords drawn they came at us. But we had a plan. Me and little Jimmy let loose with a volley of our own, hitting 3 of the guards in the legs, causing the remainder to take cover and tend to their wounded. And without being noticed during the commotion, Friar Pumpkin lowered himself from a hanging branch, snatched the chest, and pulled it and himself back up to safety. I then announced that I was looking for Lord Baden. Knowing it was a made-up name, the nobleman from the safety of his carriage was heard saying, "Well, my name's Lord Fritz." I then said, "Forgive me, Lord, for the mistake," and bid him a nice day. As Friar Pumpkin made the stealthy escape with the chest in hand, we rode off with our treasure, knowing that so many people would have food in their bellies that day. "Permission to leave the archery range," Jimmy said. "Permission granted," said the range instructor. We walked back the trail towards camp. Pumpkin said, "I'm a little hungry. How about lunch? I think it's about that time." And off to the chow hall we went for lunch. Tuesday morning, I spent working on my basketry merit badge. I had to show my counselor I could identify different types of basket weaving. I also had to plan and weave 3 different square projects, baskets, a round basket, and a camp stool. I had that camp stool well into my 30s before it fell apart. Who would have thought basket weaving would be so relaxful? I passed my merit badge, and not too soon. 12 o'clock, it's time for lunch. At lunch, Jimmy and Pumpkin had saved me a seat, and not too soon, food was being served. A big bowl of baked beans with a chopped up hot dog floating in it and a piece of bread. Each of us got maybe 6 pieces of hot dogs and 4 spoonfuls of baked beans. I think prisoners get better food than that. Thank God the trading post has microwave burritos. "I'm going to the lake and work on my fishing merit badges. What are you guys going to do after lunch?" I said. Jimmy said, "I think I'm going to go back to camp and take a nap." Pumpkin said, "Hey, that sounds like a great idea. We can catch up with you at dinner." "Great, see you later." And off to the lake I went. I threw my fishing gear in a rowboat and started to row to the other side of the lake. I had to catch 3 different kinds of fish for my merit badge. After about an hour, I had a sunny and a perch already in my bucket. I just needed one more. On the horizon, I noticed sails. Was that a schooner flying the Jolly Rogers heading right for me? So much for a nap. Captain Pumpkin Kid and Long John Jim were heading right for me. "All hands on deck," I shouted. "Come about 20 degrees, I yelled to my helmsman as my crew came alive and men ran from side to side. The wooden ship groaned with a sudden change of direction. We were heading at the enemy, straight on. With my spyglass, I could see Captain Pumpkin Kid giving commands to Long John Jim aboard their ship, the Adventure Gallery. Now aboard my ship, the HMS Dreadnought, we had a top speed of 21.6 knots, so we came down on them in no time at all. "Make ready the guns on the port side," my first mate commanded as my crew sprang into action. "Come about on the starboard, prepare to fire." There was a silence. My men held their breaths as the ships became parallel to us. "Fire!" I shouted, and with a deafening boom, 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 I was now focused on my pirates' friends as their boat leaned from one side to the other side, pausing with the possible recovery and then eventually capsizing, causing the pirates to fall into the cold water of the lake. Why would they try to ram me in a canoe when I was in a rowboat? I reached over and gave them a hand when all of a sudden my pole started to bend. I had a split-second decision. Help my friends or reel in the fish. They had life jackets on and were still clinging to their swamped adventure gallery. I chose the fish, and a good thing, too. It was a nice catfish. My fishing merit badge requirements were now complete. All I could hear was, "Get up, get up, get out of the wreck." Is it 7:30 already? I remember thinking. Grabbing my toothbrush, I headed to the latrine. Now, we were camping, but we did have a sink and running water to brush our teeth with. But you still had to sit on a toilet seat, on a box, over a big pit. I always felt myself looking in before I plopped my butt down. I guess I was possibly looking for the dreaded New Jersey Crapmas Stinkmas snake. Well, after being let down by not finding the snake, and with clean teeth, I headed off for my Fruit Loop fix. The rifle range was hollow ground. I always looked forward to going there. The range master was Mr. Cactus. He was an ex-FBI agent, and there was no fooling around. He was all business. "Permission to enter the range," Jimmy yelled. "Granted," bellowed Mr. Cactus, as all three of us walked through the gate. My trusted guide, Pumpkin, had told me about the dangers of being in Africa. But with my trusty carbine by my side, I was not worried at all. As the Jeep slowed down at the crest of the mountain, the whole Serengeti laid out before us, all 30,000 kilometers of it. Off in the distance, we could see a stream of smoke. Surely we can rescue the occupants of the crashed plane without a problem. Who would have thought a plane full of high school cheerleaders would crash in Africa? But to my 15-year-old brain, that was the only people I would rescue. As we made our way down the mountain terrain, it became so thick that we had to go on by foot, the three of us pushing on. The heat was unbearable. The giraffes were eating the leaves out of the trees, and a herd of zebras surrounded us as we walked. Using the compass readings we took from the mountain, we proceeded on. "It looks like it's just over that group of trees in the clearing," Pumpkin said. As we neared the clearing, we could see the lion and the tiger and the bear tracks in the sand. "Oh my," said Jimmy. "Think of the cheerleaders," I said as we walked on. We could smell the smoke and hearing the sounds of the lions and the tigers and the bears as they growled. As the animals were circling the fuselage of the plane, we could see the cheerleaders in the windows and hear them saying, "Someone, help us, please." "Don't worry," I thought. "The Rattlesnake Patrol is here." We made our way to the edge of the clearing, and without making a sound, we slid down into the prone position. "Quietly," I said, "aim for the centers of the black dots of their eyes." And with that, I tightly gripped the stock and took a deep breath and slowly let it out, pulling the trigger. Bam! As my shot rang out. All clear, Mr. Cactus shouted. "Guns down and placed in their slings. Make sure the bolts are open and the chambers are clean." As the three of us walked down the range to get our target, I noticed that out of 10 shots I took, 6 were in the bullseye. Thursday, I had to finish up my first aid merit badge. All that was left now was to describe the proper symptoms for preventing measures of hypothermia, convulsions, seizures, frostbites, dehydration, bruising, strains, sprains, burns, abdominal pains, broken, chipped or a loose tooth or a knocked out tooth, and muscle cramps. I got a little confused on the difference between what caused abdominal pains and muscle cramps, but I figured it out. All it was left was the hands-on. I had to show the steps that needed to be taken for someone suffering from a severe cut on the leg and on the wrist and the proper way to bandage them. The one thing I learned was not to get hurt, because I don't think most people ever learn first aid, and I think I would have just bled out. Speaking of bleeding out, I'm sure hungry. Just 30 minutes till dinner. Where did the day go? Friday already? I think it's an Apple Jacks kind of day. Fruit Friday was the last day at camp. I have one more place to explore now. Nature Island. Now, Nature Island was an island. You had to take a couple of bridges and cross two little bridges to get there. It was part nature center, part rehab center, and part learning center. As me and my crew crossed the bridges to the first island, the sky became bluer. The water was now crystal clear, and palm trees started to appear. Mango trees started to engulf the waterline, and gone were the mosquitoes. Now we started to be eaten by the biting midges. Biting midges are extremely small, less than 1/8 of an inch long, and when they bite you, they make a small cut in the skin, at the same time injecting you with the chemical to prevent your blood from clotting. The blood then forms a teeny pool, which they suck up like little vampires, and are really painful. You can hardly see them, but Jimmy's hand was covered in them. "Ouch! Get them off," Jimmy said. "Good thing I had bug repellent in my pack. Get over here and let me give you a spray." We took turns spraying each other until our skin glistened in the sunlight. "Almost there, just one more bridge," said Pumpkin, and sure enough, as we crossed it, there it was. We were in the Florida Keys. The island breeze was washing over us, the smell of the fresh air and the sounds of the surf across the beach. The butterflies were all around us. They were everywhere. I had no idea what their names were, but Pumpkin started to give them new names. "Look over there. That one looks like a taxi. It's yellow and black. And this one is all gray and black. It looks like a bad dream." I was paying so much attention to the butterflies that I did not notice I was getting closer to the swamp. "Look out," said Jimmy. I turned around, and right behind me was a crocodile eating a snake. I'm not sure if that crocodile saved me from the snake or I was going to be dessert. But we ran back to the safety of the palm trees. We could see all the crocodiles, and they were looking right at us. Pumpkin said we should move away from them, and we all agreed. We came into a clearing, and the key deer came right up to us. Now, key deer are really small. They are little and can fit in the palm of your hand, like a puppy when they are young. And when they're fully grown, they're no bigger than a medium-sized dog. They love people, and they will walk right up to you and eat from your hand. "I like this one," said Jimmy. "Can we keep him? Please, Dad, please. I will walk him and clean up after him and love him forever." "Remember the goldfish?" I said. "Never mind," said Jimmy. "Let's get back to the beach and look around and see other things we can see," Pumpkin said. It was great. We saw many different species of birds, some big, some small, and even an eagle. I was thinking, I'm getting a little sunburn, Pumpkin said. "Me too," Jimmy said. "We should head back now." "Is that the call for dinner I hear? Now how long have we been gone?" Friday night was always a big deal. There was a big campfire that everyone went to. An Indian from the Order of the Arrow would light the fire, and we would all watch skits, yell out cheers, and sing campfire songs. My favorite campfire song was a song called "I Met a Bear." The campfire was always the best time, but it was a little sad because you knew that your parents would be picking you up after breakfast Saturday morning, and that would be the end of your camping trip until next year, when Rattlesnake Patrol of Troop 11 would return to Lenape Scout Reservation.
He sized up me. I sized up him. I saw a tree. A great big tree. A great big tree. Oh golly gee. Oh golly gee. Ahead of me.